Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Now, offensive and bullying. That's the charge against national newspapers which accused 15 Conservative MPs of being mutineers, collaborators. The MPs were singled out for threatening to rebel against the government's plans to fix the Brexit date into law. One of them, Anna Soubry, told Parliament that as a result of the headlines, she'd received at least 5 tweets issuing threats against her, which have now been referred to the police. Our political editor, Gary Gibbon, has this report.
Day 2 of line-by-line scrutiny of the withdrawal bill started with the Telegraph putting 15 Tory rebel MPs on its front page. It labelled them mutineers. The Daily Mail called them collaborators, quoting an attack by a pro-Brexit Tory MP. What was your reaction when you saw that?
Well, the initial reaction is it's a ludicrous piece of journalism. I mean, completely sloppy and inaccurate as to what we've done and said. Underneath, though, it's actually a rather nasty piece of journalism too, because it's frankly a very clear attempt to intimidate and to bully elected politicians.
The other word that's buzzing around today is in the Daily Mail. It's from a colleague of yours, collaborators, you're being called.
I think that also is a bit unfair. As my husband said to me the other day, you're the least rebellious rebel I've ever met. This is being done with the absolute best intentions, as has been confirmed by the minister who started the debate last night and by the minister who closed the debate last night.
Two pro-Brexit colleagues of yours referred to you when they were speaking to me as Vichy Ford.
Well, I think that's enormously unhelpful.
You think that headline's basically just a bit silly rather than menacing, mutineers?
Well, I won't take it as menacing.
What about collaborators?
Well, I find that personally very offensive. My mother lived under Nazi occupation, and I am doing my job in a serious way, and the overtones of that headline are offensive.
A point of order, Anna Soubry.
In the Commons, just before the debate on the bill began, another of those pictured on the front page of the Telegraph said this.
According to my office, they have just reported about 5, if not more, tweets to the police issuing threats against myself following the front page article on today's Daily Telegraph.
In the debate on the bill, Priti Patel gave her first speech since being forced to resign from the government.
And of course I'm speaking today in this debate following an intensive course over the past week, I think it's fair to say, on how to stage an exit, which was the focus of a degree of international attention.
She said those who haven't come to terms with Brexit and Britain's future should not be listened to.
But what I don't think we should listen to, really, is those that simply do not have the confidence in this House, in our democracy and also in our country going forward, along with the suggestions that we are incapable of governing ourselves.
The man who leads Chancellor Merkel's party grouping in the European Parliament paid a visit on Theresa May this afternoon. Manfred Weber said this encounter left him more optimistic that the UK was now ready to make the compromises necessary to move on the Brexit talks to transition and trade in December.
Gary Gibbon. Well, earlier I spoke to Italy's Finance Minister, Pier Carlo Padoan, and I asked him what he made of one of today's front pages, the one parading what it called the UK's Brexit mutineers.
That language is a sign of a very emotional debate, which should not be so emotional and more rational, but this is common to other countries as well. I can tell you that I see 2 kinds of reactions in Europe with respect to Brexit or after Brexit. One is that the process of European integration and institution building is accelerating indeed after Brexit, not decelerating, number one. Number two, on the opposite side, one could see events such as what is happening in Catalonia as another country's imitation of what the Brexit event has given. The fact that in some parts of Europe there might be a desire for subtracting rather than adding to European integration. I do hope that European integration can make further progress. It needs to do so, and this would help also, as I said, finding good partnership with those who decided otherwise.
So what you're saying is that the spectre of Brexit has actually done more to unite Europe than to divide it at the moment?
I don't know whether it has done more, but certainly it has accelerated the political process towards more stronger European institution building. You mentioned Catalonia. I mean, Catalonia is a huge problem, not just for Spain, but for the European Union. You yourself had votes in Lombardy and Veneto. They weren't for full independence, but there are the same stirrings of greater autonomy going on. How is Italy going to cope with this, and how does Europe need to cope with a problem like Catalonia? Well, it needs to show to citizens in different countries and regions that Europe is part of the solution, not part of the problem. And Europe has been facing big challenges, including creating more jobs, growing more, which is happening, but also dealing with challenges such as massive migration and refugee flows, and also security issues. These are challenges that require a European response.
But Europe doesn't want to be part of the solution. They don't want to go anywhere near the Catalonia problem at the moment, do they?
Well, there are, of course, institutional limits to which European Union and Catalonia can have a dialogue. But in addition to the institutional aspect, there are substantial aspects dealing with what European citizens feel Europe is providing to them or not providing.
You've got an election next year. Mr. Berlusconi is trying to make a comeback. You've got the Five Star Movement as the most popular party at the moment, and this is not a recipe for stability.
It is, well, Italy is getting its own share of populism, which is something that is affecting all countries around Europe, I would say. What the country needs is to continue on this road to stability and to patient day-by-day policy making, which is producing very good results, as the very recent releases of GDP growth are showing.
David Davis has suggested that the City of London should be exempt from the ban on the freedom of movement post-Brexit. That, in other words, workers in the City of London will be able to come and go as they please. This is in an attempt to keep some of the big banks here. Would you agree with that suggestion?
Well, that's an odd solution to another problem. We have to be very transparent, and rather than tailoring up specific arrangements for specific sectors or specific zones in the UK to deal with the EU once Brexit is completed. I understand the purpose and the meaning and the rationale behind. I don't think I agree with the method, but I would have to look at the details.
Does it sound like having your cake and eating it?
Yes, it's like saying we have free trade arrangements, but up to a point, or just for some zones.
You would have the power. I mean, Italy would have the power to veto this idea. Would you veto it?
Well, I think that we need to find commonly agreed solutions in Europe. It's not a question of vetoing, it's a question of finding together solutions that will work for both the UK and the EU in the future.
Mr. Padoan, thank you very much.
Thank you.